Welcome to this comprehensive tutorial of Cura. We'll show you some tips and tricks to improve your 3D modeling experiences and make the whole process as easy as possible. First rule of thumb, make sure your software is up to date with the most current software. We have Cura 2.6.2. If you're unsure what version you have, go up to the menu, select Cura, About Cura, and you should have the details pulled up. So as you can see right here, your software programming will be displayed. If you don't have Cura 2.6.2, you can always go to Extensions, Update Checker, check for updates, and a little window should pop up at the bottom that tells you whether or not you need the newest version. Because we have the most current software, no new version was found, but if you do need to update, the window will give you a link to the website of Ultimaker, and there you can download the new software. So when you first open Cura, it's likely that your print setup will be set to recommended here, and you can just change that to custom. In the makerspace here, that's what we prefer because that allows us more control and better quality. We'll show you how to use all of these settings later in the next tutorial. For now, we're just going to focus on this left side here. In order to use Cura, you're going to need to set up printers. So if you click on this tab over here, you can add a printer. What we use in the makerspace is Ultimaker 2 Extended Plus and Ultimaker 3 Extended. So if you have a printer at home that you want to use, you can click Add Printer. And if it's an Ultimaker, it should be under the Ultimaker tab. If it's not, it'll be under the Other. So as you can see, there's plenty of other 3D printers that you can set up. So you would just click on, let's say, MakerBots, and add the printer, and then it'll set up a printer profile. To upload a model, you always want to go to this Open File, or you can go to the file, Open Files. It's just easier to go to the File folder. So we're going to open a model, and I'm going to show you how to navigate. In order to tilt and pan and look around the model, you want to hold down the right button of your mouse and click and drag. If you want to completely readjust, you hold Shift and then right click and drag again, and then you can move your camera around. It'll stay in the same position as where you left it. It'll just move it to the side or up and down. To select a model, you just use left click. And then to zoom in and out, you scroll on the scroll wheel, or if you're using one of the Apple mice, you just scroll up and down as you would on a scroll wheel. Moving up towards the end of the mouse, we'll zoom out. Moving down, we'll zoom in. So let's talk about these boxes here. You may have noticed that when I selected the model, they highlighted and were able to be selected. If I didn't have the box, my little example text box here selected, then obviously you can't select them. So let's talk about this first one right here. This is the move option. So you can click and drag on the actual build plate settings here. This is the build plate, this highlighted area. You cannot go outside of this area. Otherwise, as you can see, nothing to slice because none of the models fit the build volume. Please scale or rotate models to fit. So it has to be on this area in order to adjust the size, adjust the settings. So if you have something that exceeds this build plate size, you might be in a little bit of trouble. You'll have to rotate it or scale it down. Going back to the move though, these colors are different axes. This is the y-axis. And so everything in Cura that's going to be on the y-axis is going to be green. Red is the x-axis. And then this blue one here is the z-axis. So this will take it up and down. If you move it down, then you won't have anything to slice, as you can see. Scale, this next one down, allows you to change the size of your model. So if you wanted it to be, instead of 58 millimeters, maybe you wanted it to be 68 or maybe 48. You're scaling down. So you can either set the exact dimensions that you want. So we'll say 48. And it'll scale everything down, as you can see. If you looked at the model when I hit enter, the model scaled down right away. And then it sliced right away. You can always tell when it's slicing by the little blue bar that goes over here. So if we reset, it just quickly sliced it. This is a very simple object as well, so the simpler objects will take less time to slice than the more complex ones. But like I was saying, you can scale either by the millimeters or the percentages. If you want to change the height of the cube, so that's the Z here, but leave everything else, you would unselect the uniform scaling. The uniform scaling makes sure that everything stays square or at the same dimensions that you wanted it to be when you uploaded it. So if we wanted to change 44 millimeters to, 66, we'll say, that's a big jump. So as you can see, the scale changed on the height. In order to put it back to its original size, you just hit this reset button here. And we'll click uniform scaling on again. Snap scaling doesn't really do anything, it just sets the scaling right away to everything else. You don't really need it on. So now we're going to look at the rotate option. So if you had, say, like a sign that you were printing off, and it was just one long piece that somehow was uploaded straight up and down, you can click this lay flat option and it'll automatically apply. Because we have a cube, it doesn't really need to be changed like that. Once again, you have a reset option. So we're just going to play with these axes. So as you can see, there's a y-axis again, and the cube just rotates around it. It's not actually changing it scale-wise or size-wise, any of that. It's still the same cube. This is just turning it. So if you wanted it to print crooked on the build plate, I don't know why you would. You can move it around on the z-axis or the x-axis. We don't recommend printing things sideways like this, just because you're going to need to put support in there, and we'll explain what support is later. So we're going to reset that again. Now let's look at the mirror option. So the mirror option allows you to rotate a full 180 degrees without any effort whatsoever. So if you had accidentally written something backwards, you can always click the mirror and it should read the correct way. Or if you wanted, say you had like a protruding spot on the top, but you wanted it on the bottom, you can just mirror it different ways. This is really useful and time saving if you want to change something exactly 180 degrees. Mirroring is just an easy way to change the appearance and easily make your work easier. Finally, we're going to look at per model settings. So if you had multiple models loaded on the screen, so say we had a couple text box, we're just going to multiply that. So now we're going to have 4 text boxes. Say we wanted to print this one at like a 5% infill density, 10, 15, or 20. Or if you wanted this one to print slower than the other ones, then you would go to this per model settings, select settings, and this one kind of has a little light blue highlight. So this is the one that we're working on. None of the other ones. This is just going to select the one. So if we wanted to change the infill density, we take close and change this to, we'll keep it at 10%. And then all over again, we got to select infill density. Change this one to 15, sorry. So now this one is at 10% and this one is at 15, as you can see. The per model settings change, so that says 10, 15, and then we could change this to 20, 25, or we could print slower. There's different things that you can do. And so we can change wall thickness, or generate support. So if we wanted to put support on one of these, or slow down the speed, slow down the material flow, there's a bunch of different things that we can do. But for now, we're just gonna get rid of that. And we'll get rid of this one and this one. So we're just gonna keep one. And so finally, let's look at the view mode. The view mode allows you to see things in different ways. Let's make this window a little smaller so it'll pop up over here. So it'll read solid, X-ray, or layers. Right now we're looking at solid, so you can't see the brim, even though the brim is applied. You can't see whether or not this text lettering on top is actually there. Sometimes Cura doesn't always read. It'll display it like this, but when you go into, say, layers, it won't be there. This model was exported correctly, so we can see that there is a text carved into the top of the cube. And we can see exactly where it starts at layer 92. And it goes all the way up to 220 layers. But say we wanted to see these as different. So this is the external, the shell, as Cura calls it. Infill is the orange, as you can see right here. The green is the inner wall. And the blue is the brim, which Cura calls helpers. You can also show travels, and so that's when the print head moves around. So we're going to go back to material color. If you didn't want to look at the layer types, you can also look at X-ray, and that shows if you have like a hole cut out, you can check it out in here and see how deep it goes. So the text box goes about halfway in. And if you had a very, very complex model that had a lot of holes going in, but you weren't sure if they all intersected, which would be a problem, you can check it out in X-ray. And that's been our tutorial. We'll talk about everything on the right next time, and we'll talk about the selection tools.